All right. Thank you, everyone. So my name is Jamia Furbush. I am a program analyst with LIHEAP, Division of Energy Assistance. I'm also a licensed social worker, and I have been with LIHEAP for a little over a month, like Kate. And I'm happy that Akam and Lauren saw fit for me to present to you all today, as I am still learning everything myself. But I'm happy to be before you. And before I get started, I just wanted to again state that I am a social worker, and though I am new to LIHEAP, I'm not new to working with low-income families. Low-income families typically face greater housing hardships. On average, children in low-income households fare worse than children in higher-income households. The elderly are typically on fixed, if any, income, and the disabled are not always awarded the opportunities to excel financially. LIHEAP is ultimately a great program that alleviates a multitude of circumstances that could potentially have a negative impact. I commend each of you on the work that you have done, are currently doing, and will do in the future. Always remember that you make a difference every day. So with that being said, I know you all were chatting it up, but I don't know how many of you all have actually told the person next to you that you're doing a good job. So if you could give the person next to you a high five or a fist bump and say, you make a difference every day, all right? Good, good. So you all do make a difference every day, and I want everyone to remember that. Even if you may not see the end outcome of the benefits that each family receives from this program, please know that you are definitely making a difference. So with that being said, we would like to speak with you today about required reporting, due dates, information needed, and the submission process. And I will be presenting with Mr. Leon over there, my colleague, and he'll be coming up shortly. We do have, I believe, the longer presentation, so we're going to try to get through it pretty quickly. And if you could hold your questions till the end, we will have the open Q&A for everyone to participate in. All right. So all of these forms are on OLDC, the Online Data Collection System. All right. So today, Leon and I will go through the carryover and reallotment report, the model plan, the household report, the federal financial report, also known as the SF-425, and the performance data form. All right, the carryover and reallotment report, the model plan, and the federal financial report are required for all grantees and all recipients of federal funds. The household report has a long form, which is 40 fields, to be submitted by the states, and the short form, which is 4 fields, to be submitted by the tribes, and the performance data form is for states only. All right, we also have some optional forms, such as the quarterly allocation estimates, which states can submit, the leveraging report, which is done through an action transmittal when requested, and the Residential Energy Assistance Challenge Program, which is the REACH application, which is a supplemental LIHEAP funding for grantees to receive competitive grants for implementation through local community-based agencies of innovative ideas to help LIHEAP-eligible households reduce their energy liability. Unfortunately, we have not had any funds since about 2012 for that program, but the application will be submitted when requested. Okay. The carryover and reallotment report is due by August 1st, as you can see, of each year. Whether the day falls on a weekend or holiday, the date remains the same. The report is a foundation for what will be done with the restructuring of funds that were not obligated. Your carryover report should note the sum of funds grantees will like to use in the next fiscal year. As you may know, the LIHEAP states that each grantee obligates 90% of their funds, with a maximum for a 10% carryover, and any block grant funds for the fiscal year should be included in the carryover. And some of this information you did hear earlier, you'll hear it multiple times throughout the next 3 days. Since it is a training, that's not a bad thing. All right, by September 30th of last year, 90% of each grantee's funds should have been obligated, and 10% may have been carried over, but they must be obligated no later than September 30th of this year. With regards to the 10%, each grantee has to consider the effects of carrying over the full 10%. Some grantees carry over 7%, 8%, or even 9% to leave room for a refund. Please keep in mind to separately track each fiscal year carryover. When creating your cap amounts for admin costs, weatherization, and Assurance 16, please note that you cannot add carryover funds into the base award amount. And please keep in mind that any funds that are returned to LIHEAP will go into the pot for all grantees to use in the following fiscal year. Please also keep in mind that financially planning for the operations for the program for the year you are in should be considered when calculating the funds that will be reallotted. Okay, the Department of Health and Human Services mandates that before the next federal fiscal year award is granted to a grantee, a reallotment report from the previous year is received. So submitting those is very, very important. There are several things that must be reported in the carryover and reallotment report, which should include the sum of the allotment for the federal fiscal year, unobligated funds that remain, even if there aren't any. If there are any reallotment funds, it must be in the report. A statement has to be provided justifying why the funds that were carried over will not be used in the fiscal year in which they were allotted. Changes to the carryover and reallotment report are expected and accepted because information changes. So as you can see here, it says revised reports. It is very important that everybody say any. All right, that was weak. Come on. Everyone say any. All right, thank you. Any changes to reports or estimates be reported throughout the year through a revised report. Since the carryover and reallotment report is due August 1st, which is before the end of the federal fiscal year, it is common that your estimates present incorrect. If this is the case, submit a revised report. So remember, August 1st is where you can estimate what the outcome will be by September 30th, so it's an estimate. September 30th is the end of the federal fiscal year, and the revised report is submitted after that. If you contact your liaison, again, I'm over regions 1 and 4, so you would contact me if you're in one of those regions. They may be able to assist you with some things that can be done with the carryover funds, or they may direct you to another state or another region if they may have had some ideas of things that could be done as well. So we're going to move into the model plan, all right? It's due September 1st of every year. As a reminder, each year, in order to receive funds from LIHEAP, each grantee has to submit a yearly application. And also remember that the entire LIHEAP plan must be completed in OLDC. If a grantee feels that they need an extension for whatever reason by September 1st, a request must be submitted to ACF in writing. Because if you say it to someone, they could forget, and there's no way to track that. And we just want to keep things as smooth as possible. All right, so continuing with extension requests, the request must be in writing, like I said, and list a specified date as well as a brief description of the reason the extension is being requested. By law, a tribe may be provided an extension if the state agrees in writing to the extension. As set by Congress, ACF must receive the extension no later than September 1st. So we do give you an extension, but there's still a cap on that. Okay. Once your model plan is reviewed by ACF, there may be some revisions required, and no later than December 15th, the plan must be resubmitted in order to be considered complete. When doing your plan, most of you may have been made aware of the clone report feature. If you received an email from us recently about the clone report feature, can you raise your hand? Those that remember, okay, good. And if you haven't heard of that yet and you want more information about it, reach out to your liaison, or you can just talk to one of us here, and we'll get in touch with the proper person for you. Okay. And it is a wonderful feature. Updated responses have to be provided for certain questions, as you see on the PowerPoint. Excuse me. So when you're transferring information from the prior year, the grantees provide updated responses to a minimum of the set questions. The prior year report will not be accepted. So if you just try to go in and just say, oh, I'm not going to change anything, and just try to put it through, that's not going to work. Some things to double check when using the clone feature are check your work for dates, numbers, and calculations. Make sure your numbers are correct before you actually go ahead and submit that clone report. For the model plan, there is an electronic signature process in OLDC where each grantee, whether state or tribal, will have their chief executive officer, whether it be a governor, a chairperson, or president, sign the assurances. In order to sign assurances in OLDC, an account is required. So if you have any issues with OLDC getting in, I know I received some inquiries recently about having some issues getting into the system. Again, contact your liaison and they'll go ahead and assist you with that as well. All right, if there are ever any issues, like I said, contact your liaison. And now I will turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Leon, and he's going to go over a little bit more information about required reporting.
I'm going to start out with the household report. Let's see how this works. As it's shown, there are two dates. Why are there two dates? September 1 is that's when your grant application has to be submitted, no later than that. The household report is part of your grant application, but you still may be operating your program, especially cooling assistance, weatherization, maybe even crisis assistance. So we allow you to put in reasonable estimates for each type of assistance that you've provided in the fiscal year. But by December 15th, we really need actual data that you're ready to stand behind and defend if necessary. Not by us maybe, but your congressman maybe? No. So the deadline for that is December 15th, and that's why there are two dates. There are two forms. The long form is what the states and the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico complete. The short form is what the tribes and the remaining territories are required to submit. And again, as I've said, that has to be part of your grant application. But let me emphasize, it needs to be complete. Everything needs to be filled in. It's just a definition of completeness. So if something's missing, we'll probably have to get back to you. In terms of what the report really focuses on, the hint is in the name of the report, household report. So what we're talking about is reporting on the number of households assisted with all available LIHEAP, and I should say federal funds. We don't want state funds or CSBG. The federal LIHEAP funds is what you need to report on. And I think that this makes that point. This kind of, for me at least, talks about when you have another agency administering your funds, that you're still responsible. You're the grantee of record. This comes up, it's been a problem in the area of weatherization, and I think a lot of you can understand sometimes the difficulty of getting the data that you need to report to us. We are counting households, not people, not heads of household, but households, and you should be using the definition that's in the statute. Again, we have the estimates when necessary, but let's have final numbers by December 15th. Okay, the long form reports, it has several sections to it, but let me start out with the applicants first. First have to apply to a program before you can determine whether they're assisted or not. So we need to have, and I'm kind of switching on this, the number of applicants who apply for the program. If they then receive assistance, then they are your assisted households, and that's what this is dealing with. We also need them broken out by poverty levels, by vulnerable population, and by that we mean households with at least one member who's elderly, disabled, or a young child. Again, here are the applicant households, and the only thing we require of that, besides the number, is broken out by poverty level. Okay, we also have an additional data variable dealing with young children. It's optional, but it's only, if you want to report it, it's reported in a section on households that are assisted. Okay, unduplicated household counts. This has probably been a nemesis for a number of us dealing with how to count this. For each type of assistance, we need for you to count households only once that receive that type of assistance. If the household then goes ahead, but receives an additional type of assistance, such as cooling, they need to be counted once under cooling assistance. So for each type of assistance, household is required to be counted once. But now we have a fairly new requirement, and this is one that's probably the most problematic, but I think that states have been making a lot of gains on, and that is how many households were assisted that received any type of LIHEAP assistance. For all these years, we've not been able to answer the question, how many households get assisted with LIHEAP assistance? Well, we can talk about heating assistance, we can talk about cooling, but you can't add them together because if you do, or crisis or weatherization, a household may be counted more than once. And so this is designed to get at that question. And for each type of assistance, again, you know the types of assistance. Now I'm going to move to the federal financial report that's due December 31st. It deals with expended funds. Now, we're not talking about obligated funds, we're talking about expenditure of block grant funds. And I think Eula spent time with you and walking you through that this morning. So within 90 days at the end of the fiscal year, you're supposed to report on the dollar amount of the funds expended by your agency or grantee during the fiscal year and the date of the last obligation of funds for that fiscal year. There are really two separate SF 425s required. One must be done for the block grant itself, and a second one is required for the following fiscal year if this is what this is trying to get at is carryover of funds. So we need a separate SF 425 if you've carried over funds from the previous year. And then there's another one too. If we do get to reach and you do get a grant from that, you need to have a separate SF 425 on that. Again, the regular block grant. Okay, one or more. Okay, I think we made these points. And here's the link to get to where it is on our website or, I'm sorry, FEMA? I'm sorry. Yuli, I'm sorry. What is this link to? FEMA?
Oh, it's a copy of the SF 425
form. Yeah. Right. It's used across government, so it threw me. I've never seen one before, so bear with me.
The SF is standard form, so it's the exact same one for all federal funds. So this one's off the FEMA website. It's a pickup.
Okay, the new kid on the block in terms of forms is the performance data report. And that's going to be done at the end of January. It has 3 sections. And the first section really is an oldie but a goodie. That's what we used to call the LIHEAP Grantee Survey on sources and uses of funds. That should be very familiar to those of you who have been administering the program for more than 1 year. What's new is the performance measures. We know it's going to take a lot of effort and is taking a lot of effort. So we have technical assistance that we can make available to you through a Prize Incorporated, which they will be speaking more about that tomorrow. And we also have the Performance Measures Implementation Work Group, which is a group of your peers that have really been trying to put the stamp on performance measurement from a state's perspective, to make sure that we're asking for things that we think can be done, that states can do, and are reasonable to ask for in this climate of accountability. Okay, the grantee survey I've talked about, LIHEAP funds, average household benefits, also maximum income cutoffs for a household of 4. Again, here we're talking now about obligations, not expenditure of funds. And on the section 1, because it deals with your block grant and several other awards that you've gotten from us, we generate those numbers or dollar amounts. If you're in disagreement with any of them, you should immediately call your liaison because we hope we've got it right, but if we got it wrong, that's on us because we're giving you the numbers. So we need to know if there's a problem with the numbers that we pre-populate on the survey. I should be saying this is for the states, not for, what I'm moving into now is for the states and not for the tribes and the territories. Maybe allotment, reach if you have that, leveraging incentive if you have that, if there's money for that. And again, the statement here about the source values is we put in those values for the ones that we know we've generated, and they should be accurate, but please contact us if it's not, if they are not. What's new is starting with Section 2, required performance measures. And that's going to be in Section 2, and it really deals with data in 3 areas: energy burden targeting, restoration of home energy, and prevention of loss of home energy service. It's optional for reporting in January 2016 using 2015 data, but starting in January of 2017, it will be required using FY 2016 data. And that's what we're trying to prepare you for with resources, primarily the training and technical assistance that we can offer. Also, there are optional measures that were generated a number of years ago by our performance measures implementation, planning. It was a planning work group, not the implementation. And these are measures that we feel that some states really want to collect this kind of data and report it because it's going to be useful for them. And so we're going to make that available to them through the OLDC. Okay, is that mine, allocation estimates? Is that yours, isn't it? Okay, I'll stop now.
All right, so another optional form is the quarterly allocation estimate form, which is due by September 1st. And this form is voluntary, but if grantees would like more than 25% of their award in each quarter, they can receive more. There is a validation in the form to make sure the percentages equal 100%. States have the option to use this feature, but unfortunately tribes get 100% of their allocation in the first quarter. The LIHEAP leveraging report is due in mid-November, and it is considered a voluntary form, but the leveraging report must be submitted if grantees would like to receive leveraging incentive funds through the program. LIHEAP has not received any funds since about 2011. In the event that we did have funds, though, we would set aside, for example, $30 million. We would allow grantees to submit a form. And everyone who submits a valid report would get funds, pretty much. And if funds are available in action transmittal, will be sent out to grantees to alert them of that. All right, the leveraging report consists of 2 parts, and the resources, benefit, and the summary. All right. The resource benefit is to be completed for each separate leveraged resource that the grantee proposes to count for the base period, which is the fiscal year for which a grantee's leveraging activities are reported to LIHEAP. The way it works is the financial information in item 1 on the form is to be added together for all resources and benefits, and the totals are to be shown on the summary page. And going into yours. The summary page is a 1-page form used to show the grand totals for all leveraged resources that the grantee proposes to count for the base period, calculated by adding together the financial information provided in item 1 of the resource benefit description pages, part 1 of the leveraging report for all resources and benefits. It is to show the gross value of these leveraged resources and benefits, any offsetting costs incurred by the grantee to leverage the resources, any offsetting costs imposed on low-income households to receive the benefits, and the net value of the leveraged resources and benefits. All right, so I'm going to transfer it back over to Leon, and I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. And again, we will have an open Q&A after we finish this portion.
Very good. I want to go home now. Thank you.
I'll come back and get my
So
stuff.
I'm going to talk about the REACH model plan. It's when we again, it's something that has been very infrequent lately, but who knows what's going to happen with the budget. Each year we always have this optimistic view of we're going to get leveraging money, and from leveraging we can take up to 25% of that and put it into the REACH program. So when we do have money, then if you want to apply, you need to apply by March 30th. And the acronym for REACH is, as it says, Residential Energy Assistance Challenge Program. It's voluntary. You don't have to submit an application, a plan. And I think Lauren was covering this earlier today. It's designed to help low-income households reduce energy vulnerability, minimize health and safety risk, and high burdens on low-income households. Also, it can be viewed as preventing homelessness as a result of the inability to pay people their fuel bills, energy bills, and to increase the efficiency of energy usage by low-income households, helping them achieve energy self-sufficiency. When you do get the money, it is for a 2-year period of time. And we are focusing on getting, we want to get REACH applications that deal with home energy related and innovative health and safety practices for vulnerable populations. We've been trying to track the degree to which the program does serve the elderly, young children, and the disabled. And that's something some of you may remember as our targeting index. To make sure you only provide the benefits, the services to LIHEAP eligible households. Okay, there's a basic REACH grant, and then there's additional funding that may be awarded for, if it's approved, energy efficiency education services. And that plan is optional and is not required as part of the REACH plan application. And like everything else I think we talked about today, everything goes through the online data collection system. And in that system, you can receive 2 types of warnings. One is called a warning notification, and it tells you about a possible inconsistency or mistake in the data. Let me stop here just for a second. What we have the ability now to do that we just couldn't do it without electronic files is we cross-check your the entries that you put in the household report against the grantee survey, against your model plan, and the carryover report, because they all connect to each other. And so what we're looking for is consistency. So please, before you submit, let's say the grantee survey is the last of these kind of reports that we deal with. And these are the reports that go into the report to Congress. So if you know we're looking for that, it's not trying to trip you up. We want to make sure we have accurate data, and one way of viewing that is it's consistent. If you ran cooling, and it says so in your state plan as may be amended, and you have cooling dollars and cooling households, that's consistent. But we've had problems with that area before, so it's something now that we can give you a warning, and so you won't be taken by surprise. And the idea of the warning flag is you still can go ahead and submit the report, but it is raising something you should be paying attention to. And then we have the error notification, and that mistake will not allow you to submit the report. You're going to have to fix that before you can go through the rest of the report through OLDC. And it won't be, and again, you can't certify the report and submit it until that error has been addressed. Believe me, this is saving us and you a lot of time. For those of you who've dealt with the program, since I know we're dealing with new directors also, we spent a lot of time on the phone, basically trying to reach each other, and questions that we had that now are addressed, we address them in the back end. You submitted the reports, and maybe in a couple months we got to the reports. But it's much better to deal with this in the front end, and that's one of the benefits of the OLDC system. And if you need any assistance with that system, please contact your regional liaison. Again, we don't accept paper anymore, no more faxes, and no more emails. And again, I think it's been stated earlier, you can find the regional liaisons through our office at our website. Action transmittals will go out related to these reports. Training and technical assistance, basically the Bilgent contract, but on performance measures and the household report and the grantee survey, that's a little bit more specialized, and we have a prize that's working with that, with you on that. I don't think I have to go through the resources. We've done that already, so I'm going to turn it back to Yulia. Questions and answers. At least questions. I don't know about the answers. Thank you.
So,
Before you get down, can you tell us the names of the people who might be calling us about our reports so that we would recognize the advisor employees' names?
I think some of them are here. You probably will hear them and meet them. But of course, there's always David Carroll. Then we have Nicholas Cavello and Kevin. I'm going to blank on the name.
McGrath,
Okay, and one other. I'm blanking.
Trayvon is.
There you go. Yeah, I know. If you're getting, if somebody's calling you from saying that, you know they're a contractor, but they are with us, and please work with them. Thank you.